possibly one of my favourite places to go. So today I'm going to talk to you about, can you tell from my t-shirt? Nepal. Don't let this confuse you. I did not climb Everest. So, as I say, I'd never really thought of going to Nepal before, and think Chitwan is necessarily on people's radar. Loads of shops selling little knickknacks and clothes and hats. I actually bought, I should have got it, I bought a Chitwan hat with I think it's got a rhino on the front. And actually in the heat wave we've been having in the UK, when the sun is really, I didn't think I'd ever wear it, unironically, but it really helped, it really cooled me down. So loads of stuff, fridge magnets, pins, I mean all your usual souvenir stuff, but it's basically all on this high street. And there's loads of restaurants as well, some really nice ones, there's some good bars as well, even some karaoke places. So Chitwan actually is, and I think having not long come from India to then going to Chitwan was really quite relaxing, quite special, because it was such a different pace. So it's really nice. And actually I think I'm wrong, Chitwan wasn't the first place we went, it was somewhere called Lumpini, which I'll talk about next, but it wasn't far from Lumpini, so yeah, it's a good place to visit. When I crossed the border from India, the first place we went was Lumpini. I wouldn't necessarily go back, not because I didn't like it. Again, it was very peaceful, very tranquil. There just wasn't as much to do there as there was in Chitwan. But Lumpini is a very special place for Buddhists, as this is where the Buddha was born. So there is a grounds and a temple in honour of it, dedicated to it. And you can walk around, there's monks walking around, and a lot of people use it as a kind of pilgrimage site. Very sacred, very relaxing. There's prayer flags everywhere, all over the trees and the grounds. So you can tell you're somewhere special. And you can see the tree where the Buddha's mother had her first contraction, I believe. And when you go inside the temple, you can't sort of throw coins in or anything. It's covered over, but you can see the actual place where she gave birth. So that was special. It's very quiet in there. You can't take pictures, but you know you're somewhere holy, I suppose. So it's nice. I'm glad I've seen it. I'm glad I've done it. But as I say, I'm not a Buddhist, so I wouldn't go back. But it was nice, especially as I was leaving. The sun was going down, and there were some monks walking around. Oh, and that's the other thing. You have to take your shoes off, just so you know. And you are outside, so keep that in mind. As I was leaving, there were some monks lighting candles. It's actually the place where you drop your shoes off and they give them back to you, but there was monks lighting candles. I have a really nice photo actually. So it's very special. And then the major hub of Nepal is obviously its capital, which is Kathmandu. I really like the song Kathmandu by Bob Seger. It's really catchy. I loved Kathmandu. I'd happily go back there, and if you go out of that area, there is a much more metropolitan feel to the city. There's high rises, there's very fancy restaurants they're still cheap compared to places like London, but they were more expensive and quite pricey for Nepal. But in the heart of Kathmandu, it's all very reasonably priced, and there's so much hustle and bustle going on. I really liked it. So as I say, I was only in Kathmandu for a little while. I was then flying home, and I wish I'd extended my trip because some other people went on to do some hiking in the Himalayas, which I didn't do. I didn't even know it was an option to add on, but so sadly I didn't get to do that. But I've seen their photos and it looked unreal. If a bit rough and ready, because you're not like put up in a hotel, you're in homestays and guest houses, so the facilities are quite basic. You can't always necessarily shower, but as I say, I didn't get to do that. But some major sites in Kathmandu, probably the biggest draw is one of the stupas. It's called Buddhanath Stupa, probably said it wrong, and it's the largest stupa in the world. So it's a temple, and they've got these all over Nepal, Tibet. That you'll recognise them, but the one in Kathmandu is the largest in the world. So it was built around originally the 5th century. It has become a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but Nepal is prone. There have been some earthquakes over the years. Some of you will remember the one in 2015 was really quite catastrophic and devastating, and a lot of things had to be rebuilt. So there's a picture. My uncle went to Nepal 35 years ago or so, and I tried to take pictures. I had his photos and I took pictures of my own to try and match what he had done, sort of then and now. But because of the earthquake and things being rebuilt, they don't quite look the same. They are the same site, but they're slightly different in how they look because the original got destroyed. So yeah, Buddhanath Stupa, and it is huge. You can see it when I flew out of Kathmandu. You can see it from the plane. It's absolutely massive, and there's hundreds of people there, and they all walk around it clockwise. There's sort of wheels on it as well that you can spin as you go. I don't know what the significance of that is, but it's all to do with Buddhism, but I don't know much about Buddhism, so I couldn't say. So yeah, everyone's walking around really, but you can actually walk on it. You can pay, I mean, I think it was 300 rupees, so £1.50, if that. It really wasn't expensive, so I paid it. But it's quite funny because people are walking around it, and so quickly as well. It wasn't slow. You sort of have to merge in to be able to get through. And when we were on top, there were a couple of people. I was there quite late in the evening, but there was virtually no one up there. So late afternoon, early evening is a really good place to go. And all around the stupa again, there's loads of shops, loads of coffee shops. So I went and got a coffee after and had a really nice. I was sitting in the window and had a really nice view, and it sort of, as it lights up at night, is really lovely. So I'd recommend going at sort of that time of day. So if you're limited on time, that's the one I would recommend you go to, because it is really central. It's really easy to get to. The other one is, I'm so sorry, keep your wits about you as well, because they can sneak up on you. And I was walking along and a little baby came up, but obviously where there's a baby there's a mama, right? And the mamas are what you have to look out for the most, so do keep your wits about you and don't have any food in your bag, because that's just asking for trouble. But I did go really early in the morning, so actually a lot of the monkeys were asleep, so it was easier to get around. And I imagine it probably gets busier in the day, but it was really quiet when I went there, really quiet. There was maybe 20, 30 people in the main bit when I got there, and then some shop vendors selling just little crappy souvenirs. But if you've got the time, I really recommend visiting. If you're short on time, I would just do the other stupa first, because this one is a bit more long-winded to get to. But you can get taxis really easily. I think in Nepal I think it's called DIDI, which is really good, really easy to use, and you can, if you're in a rush, you can offer more money on the app. If you're not in a rush, you can offer less money, and then whoever's nearby decides if they want to pick you up or not. It's not a set fare for any rooms, which I thought was nice. And then another site that I really wanted to visit was Durbar Square. Again, UNESCO World Heritage Site, built between the 12th and 18th century, but again, very sadly destroyed in the earthquake and has been rebuilt, so there's not necessarily much left that's original. But it was formerly a royal palace complex, so kings would live there, and I think, if I remember correctly, because they're quite tall buildings, obviously for the time it would have been built, and I believe it was done so that the king could look out and see if other houses, if they had smoke coming out, it means they could eat because they were cooking, and so he could see who wasn't able to cook for themselves, something like that. I can't really remember, but I thought that was interesting. And so it's quite expensive by Nepalese standards. I think it was 1,000 rupees to get in, and you get a pass, and then it's for the day, so you can leave and come back. So keep hold of it if you want to go back later in the day. It's not massive, but I wanted to go. I thought it was worthwhile going. Really beautiful architecture. There's sort of wooden carvings and all these doors, and there's little shrines and trees with shrines in them, and there's stuff all over the place. It's really, really special, and they're really beautiful buildings as well. I love all that kind of architecture. And nowadays as well, it's home to, it's called a Kumari, which is basically a young girl who is believed to be a living deity, and from what I understand, they are treated like a god, so they're taken away from their family. They don't walk, they're carried everywhere, and you can see her, I think, twice a day, sort of in the late morning and early afternoon. She pops out, you see her in a window, and it's always a young girl, and it must be terrifying for them, but this is the tradition, and the family consider it an honour to have their daughter be a Kumari. But once they start their periods, they're shipped off. Basically, they're kicked out, and another Kumari will take her place. So I think there was one. She never got her period, so she was getting older and older, and eventually I think they got her out it was a really stupid loophole, but she got kicked out. I think she was maybe in her 20s by that point, but generally So they're kind of the main sites. And as I say, Kathmandu's got loads of things to shop. I bought this t-shirt, and it's really well made. It's all embroidered. It's a solid t-shirt. I bought like a little purse as well, which is handy when I'm in an airport and I don't want to go in my backpack and get my passport and my phone. I just put it in here and have that out, and then when I have to board the plane, chuck it in my bag. So that was really useful. Again, really solidly made. A friend of mine bought some stuff when we were in India, and a week later, I think she bought it once, and a week later it had ripped and broken. So I didn't buy anything in India, so I can't comment. But the stuff I bought in Nepal, absolutely solid and comfy. So shopping in Nepal is really good. And if you are going to climb Everest and you've maybe forgotten something, they have so many shops to buy climbing gear. Now, it's not legit. You're not buying a North Face jacket for a tenner, and it's not going to be real, but they're warm, they're good in a pinch, so they know why people are there. And depending what time of year you go, you will see people arriving with their climbing stuff and getting ready before they head to Lukla and doing that trek to base camp before they acclimatise. So it's quite exciting, actually. And if I was to go back, so I was there March time, and I think the climbing season starts around April, so I'd actually really like to go back when people are arriving into Kathmandu before they go off on their expeditions. And then just a couple other things to know. When you're in Nepal, you must have momos. They're fried or steamed dumplings. They've got meat, vegetables, cheese, different flavours. Absolutely delicious. I have a theory that so far has been proved right. Every country has its own type of dumpling, and momos are Nepal. I mean, you can get them in India as well, and Tibet, and Bhutan actually, but Nepalese momos are really nice. They always come with a dipping sauce as well. Do be careful, it can be spicy. Nepalese food generally is spicier than other places I've been, so maybe have a little bit to taste before you start dunking stuff in. And one other thing that's really worth mentioning, so obviously Everest is the draw for Nepal, for people around the world, right? And I love watching an Everest documentary. I like the movie. I love all things Everest. I'm never going to climb it because it's crazy expensive, and I'm not a climber. I can barely climb the stairs to my flat, let alone a mountain. But you have to fly from Kathmandu to Lukla, and that's where it starts. I believe it's Lukla. And there's other parts of Nepal you can fly to. Pokhara is a really popular one, and you can do other hikes around there. You need to be careful because of their airline safety record. So I know working in travel, a lot of people like flying with airlines they know that are well known all around the world, and the BAs, the Virgins, the EasyJets of the world, we know them, we trust them, we use them. Nepal Airlines are not allowed to fly into Europe because their airline safety standards are not up to scratch. So Nepalese Air, which would have been much easier to fly with and cheaper, I wouldn't do it. And they're banned from flying into Europe. I know there's been talk of a flight Kathmandu direct to London, but at the moment that can't happen because they're not considered safe enough. So I think you've got but it is worth keeping in mind. They're not up to the standards of airlines compared to the rest of the world, so I had the option to do the Everest scenic flight, and I'd have loved to have seen Everest, but I didn't want to fly on one of those airlines, so sadly I didn't do it. I know people who did. It was perfectly safe. They saw Everest, they loved it. It is expensive, it's about £200, but I didn't want to do it. So Nepal is fantastic in every single way, but in terms of infrastructure, it's not brilliant. So keep that in mind when you're there. I was on a trip that involved a lot of driving, and I mean, driving through the scenery is amazing, so I would always take the driving option anyway, but they are long trips. If you're on a time crunch, you're going to want to fly, but just keep that in mind that they're not the best airlines in the world. So if you can, I would drive to where you need to go. So that's everything I have on Nepal. As I say, it wasn't a country that was the top of my travel list. I purely